All right, so I'm just testing to see if this is going to work. I'm going live, but I'm not getting any people logging in yet. We will see. Okay, that was a notification. So there's a delayed notification. We're going to see if people actually can hear me. We'll find out in about 2 seconds. Hey, Dren, how are you? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Let me know. We're just doing a quick sound test because there's no other way to do it. Hey. Hi, Shaw. How are you? So can you hear me? Let me know. Give me a yes. I can hear you in the comments. Yeah. Hey, Jamal. How are you? Gail. How are you? Can you hear me? Let me know if you can hear me. Stream is F. It aims to work. Yes, we can hear you. Oh, it's working now. Yeah, I've been trying to figure out why we had sound troubles the last couple of times, as you know, probably. All right, so I guess you can hear me. That's unbelievable. That's fantastic. All right, so, all right, good. So that's cool. So I'll let people come on. I wasn't planning on doing a live stream. I was just trying to debug this but whatever reasons, it's working now. Who knows? The gremlins. All right, so we're in. Sam, Robert, That's That, Unicorn Hunter, Chris, Danish, Michael, Danish. All right, Gail, thanks. I can hear you. Fantastic. So the audio is clear. Everything's clear. That's cool. All right, so you know what? This is going to be a short one. I always say that, but this one's going to be a short one because I got this much work to do. If you have any questions, now is the time to put them to me, and I will do my best to answer them. So you let me know. How's Stef's? Stef is, but that's right here. Stef is pretty good. We had some sound issues, if you don't know, with the previous broadcast. I was trying to figure out why, but here we go. Yes. What are your thoughts on Microsoft stopping support for PHP? I wouldn't be so concerned. They're only stopping support for the DLL implementation of PHP. So whatever. It doesn't mean somebody else can't support PHP 8 on Windows. Although most people don't use PHP on Windows, they use it on Linux. So it's really a non-issue in my opinion. How's your mouse? The mouse is good. I had to power it up. It's working good now. So we're all good. All right. Could you tell us a path or roadmap for front end? Yeah, it's very consistent, really. You learn the basics. My fundamentals course will teach you all the basics, and then you build a couple of little mini projects. The basics are HTML5, CSS3, a little bit of JavaScript, some design principles, and then just go out there and start building things. You may have to learn a little bit of Bootstrap 3 or 4 or 5 maybe, although it's not critical. And, again, a big part of learning how to code is just jumping into code and writing code, so keep that in mind. Let's up, Hologram Nunchuck. I remember that name. I'm good. How are you? Hello, hey, John Smith. I don't know what that is, but... feedback on data science for a beginner. Don't chase after data science because you see the dollar bills, because you're going to have to get a data science degree, I imagine, which is 3 years, lots of debt. Whereas I've done a video you can check out in my past catalog where I compared that to just getting into web development from the beginning, where you don't need a degree. Generally speaking, if you do the math, I don't think you could catch up to the web developer in terms of how much money they're making, because they're going to be making money for a few years while you're studying data science. And and then they'll be way ahead of you financially. Now, if you just like data science, then just do data science. That's good. First and foremost, do what you like. If you don't like what you're doing, even if you make more money, it's going to be a rotten situation. Hey, Stefan, what is your opinion about MERN full stack in the future? It will be fine. Don't worry about it. All the popular tech that's around today, it's not, unless something really strange happens, it's not going to go away anytime soon. For example, I've been doing this since the early 90s. I've seen maybe just a handful of big huge disruptions in the development world. Flash going away in 2011, that was a huge, unusual disruption. People in 1995, about when people were 96, were transitioning away from Perl CGI-based application development into more modern architectures like page-based ASP, JSPs, ColdFusion-based, PHP-based development. That was one of the rare times I've seen in my career since the 90s where you had a big disruption like that. So going away from Perl CGI to modern tech, Flash going away, going from non-CSS based design to CSS based design. Off the top of my head, those are the biggest disruptions. So 3 in like 25 years. So it isn't much. Now, you're going to see that in the early days of the development game, especially the web development, because it's early days. Technology changes rapidly in the initial stages, when it's first being developed, but as over time, as it stabilizes, these radical changes become less and less often, and you're not going to see anything. So I don't think you're going to see major changes anytime soon, simply because things are very mature now. Bitcoin is going to make a move soon. Perhaps the time to buy Bitcoin was 7 years ago, but you could still make money, perhaps. I don't know. I don't follow that market. Where do you get your programming tech news? Google. I put out some stuff on there, and I try to find stuff that's going to be useful. Once I get the schools up and running, I'll be doing more nerd news on a regular basis. I'll be re-implementing that. Can you only deploy Python, Flask, Django sites only on selected hosting sites like Linode, AWS? No, not at all. Most modern hosting now will support Python on the back end with Django. It's very easy to find, so you don't necessarily need to go with any of those major providers. How to make money with open source. I am building an ops tool that can log the complete state when a JVM exception occurs. That is going to be an interesting trick because you're going to have to show value in that, and you're going to have to build that up. Building any type of SaaS, software as a service, and I guess you could kind of characterize that. Well, not really, no. This would be something you could sell, or maybe you could sell it as a service where they pay for updates or support. There's all these different models out there that you can utilize to monetize your coding. SaaS model is one where people pay for access to your software. Another model is like Red Hat. You give away one version, and then later on, after a certain amount of development, and people have a certain dependency on your product, if it gets into large businesses, then you might be able to make money on support services, et cetera, et cetera. One thing, big companies will not touch certain open source projects unless there's some other company backing the open source projects, just in case something should happen. So that's another way of doing that. Anyway, that's a whole video I could do. So if there's enough demand, I'll maybe do one. I'll discuss it. Do you think NoSQL will be better than SQL in the future? I think they will both have their place. I think that you will not see SQL disappear. But I think they're trying to expand NoSQL's use cases so that people will implement it. But if you learn a little bit of both, and then you just let the market tell you which one you're going to learn in real world, then you just go that way. Does AI require lots of maths? Certain types of AI does, other types of AI doesn't. Without getting into the jargon, and I'm hardly an AI expert, once the core AI engines are built, implementing them won't require any math whatsoever, because it will have been done already. So it depends if you're on the research end or on the use end of the AI. Still early going. Hey, Stefan, which martial art was your favorite? That's a good question. It depends on how old I was, and depends on what I was interested in at the time. In my teens, I was very interested in the kung fus and the gung fus, because it was kind of, there's a romantic aspect to it, for lack of better words. It was kind of exotic. But as I got older and I was getting into real life situations, then I found more combat-oriented martial arts was better for me, whether it be judo or wrestling or boxing, etc. So it depends on my mindset at the time. I find that all martial arts have their pros and their cons. Some are very combat-oriented, some are not at all. But there's nothing wrong with somebody wanting to do Tai Chi or Aikido. You're not going to become a great fighter with those styles, but they have their value and so on. There you go. Which one is better for backend? Laravel PHP versus Django Python versus Express Node.js? I think they're all neck and neck, and they all have their pros and cons. For freelance, I lean towards PHP Laravel personally. Maybe Express and Node, although the packages and the package management is still a big mess as far as I understand with Node, but somebody may be able to correct me. I haven't looked at it in a while. Python Django is fine as well. It all depends on the circumstances and the situation. You may go into a company where they already have an infrastructure with Python, where they're automating a bunch of server processes, and they got some Python coders, and they say, hey, let's just use Python for our web app. Or you may have people who are just JavaScript oriented. A lot of these frameworks and languages, they're neck and neck. They're neck and neck in what they can do. So if you, let's say you cut your teeth, you learn Node.js and Express.js, and whatever, a year later, 6 months later, something else comes up, it will be easy for you to transition over, because it's like learning how to drive I learned how to drive a high-performance cars in a Ferrari, and then one day you have to move over Lamborghini. There's some differences, but you're gonna know how to drive a high-performance car. It'll be a little bit of learning on your part to move to something else, but it won't be like learning from scratch, not even close. When I was in the freelance game, I would jump from tech to tech depending on the needs of the company and the needs of the job, and it would just take me a couple of days to get up and running with the new language or technology. Literally just a couple of days. The hard part is architecture and planning and organizing. It's not really the underlying tech most of the time. Do you think PHP will be dead in the near future? Next 2 to 3 years? Not even close. It's too big. PHP has reached critical mass, if you will, in terms of its usage out there. It's not possible. Not possible. What do you think about bioinformatics? Is it possible for software developer to pursue that? I don't know. Don't know that field, so I have no comments. Sorry. Which JS framework is best for beginners? I would lean towards Express because it's the dominant one. That's it. Do you think PHP will be dead? Oh, I just read that one. I've done some Python and procedural in high school, but I still don't get OOP in Java even after a year in university. Any advice? Yeah, got 2 things you could do. My Python course has a chapter on OOP. You'll learn it, you'll know it and well after you do it. Or you can go to killerphp.com, which is my old PHP site, and I put out an object-oriented 22-step free tutorial, written and some video components which you can follow. Very popular, and I've had countless people tell me that they never understood OOP, and then they did that free tutorial on killerphp.com. Just look there's a tab at the top that says object-oriented PHP tutorial, and you will understand the basics of object-oriented programming and why and how to do it and why they do certain things, etc. Not everything, but you're going to learn. Once you get past that initial hurdle, then everything else becomes very approachable. But that isn't uncommon. That isn't uncommon. Hi, Stefan. How are you? I'm pretty good. Your opinion, please. Store locally or clouds? SQLite versus Firebase. Flutter versus mobile dev. Thank you. I prefer cloud because if hard drives can break, Before Google or Microsoft, if Google or Microsoft were to lose your data, the world would be at an end at that point. So your data on one of these massive cloud providers is far safer than on multiple copies. Imagine you have hard drives with your stuff, which I do have, but you have a fire in your house and you lose everything. It's on the cloud. I would have a secret cloud, whether it be a Dropbox or something, where you put some very critical stuff and lock it up, send it in, upload critical stuff. It's locked, password protected and stuff within the cloud. I'm into cloud more than anything. SQLite versus Firebase. I would not use SQLite. Flutter mobile dev. Thank you. My general thinking about mobile development: go cross-platform first, and then go native if you have to. For a bunch of reasons I've discussed in other videos. Is web development the best path in computer science? Well, it's the most flexible path, I think. It's the most flexible path. Hey, Stef, good to see ya. Another QA. Indeed. How are ya? Well, this was actually just a test to see if the sound was going to work, and strangely, the sound worked. All right. Hello, I am Yemi Badmus. Please, what are the current job opportunities with Flutter, or it is something for the future? I think it's probably something more for the future, but just look around. Go to Indeed.com. Start typing in things. If you learn Flutter on the side, for example, and start doing some things, just tinkering around with it, understanding it, knowing it, that might lead to some really good opportunities where you'll be one of the first ones doing it. It's hard to say with any tech whether or not it's going to have legs, but I think Flutter has a good chance anyhow. What we got here? Is learning WordPress and PHP a bad idea in 2020? My main concern is freelancing. They're the king. Those two are the king of freelancing. The king. We had in my mentoring community, shameless plug, I have a mentoring community. In my mentoring community, one of the mentees, one of the students, and I forget her name, I apologize, I forget her name all of a sudden. But anyway, she was talking about how she was working in a very large company and they were getting they couldn't handle the amount of requests they were having for maintaining and building WordPress sites. They couldn't find the manpower. There's a huge demand for that. Huge demand. In fact, my own WordPress sites for Studio Web and Killer PHP and others, the theme's got to be updated. So I contacted my man, the guy who's been working on these things for me for years, to get him to update those things. So it's just too big. Meaning there's a lot of work there. Learned assembler in C and was well paid, but never patterns like the factory pattern. Is it too late for me? Not even. Go for it. Why not? Factory pattern is one of the important patterns, actually. In case you guys don't know, he's talking about software development design patterns. In software development, there are ways in which the nerds over the years and decades have figured out how to do certain things, how to solve certain common problems. And they've created these collection of ideas called design patterns. And a design pattern is just like, if you have this type of programmatic thing to accomplish, this is the way that we've discovered over the decades or years is the best way of doing it. The most common one is probably model view controller. It's basically a way to create, to structure any type of app. It was kind of put together by the Smalltalk community. Smalltalk was a programming language from, I think, the 70s. And so they came up with this idea of model view controller, the way to segment, to chunk out your application into the model, which is basically all the data handling code, the view, which is basically the screens people see, and the controller, which is the code that brokers the communications between the view code and the model code. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. That's probably, arguably, the most important design pattern today. Not everybody uses them, but design patterns are useful because they allow you to quickly decide how to architect or how to solve a certain problem. It's also a great way to communicate between nerds. So you might say, use a factory on that, or that's a factory pattern, or use MVC here, etc. So it's just you don't have to be an expert in them, but there's a handful you should know. And it's like kind of like martial arts, where in martial arts, certain styles, you're going to learn all kinds of techniques, but the world champions tend to use like one or two or three, but they use over and over and over and over again. In my software development career, I would use MVC. I use the decorator pattern all the time. Of course, I use iterator and factories once in a while. But my big two were MVC and the decorator pattern. Some people call that dependency injection. When I was doing what Java is called servlet filters. Anyway, do you think there will be a time of universal stack for web, like one universal backend language? No, because software developers all have their ideas and preferences about what's better, right? It's like cars, like, people love BMW, I love BMW, and Audi suck, and Audi people, vice versa, and Porsche, etc. So no, but what you are having now is getting close to universal implementation styles, where whether you're building a web app, for example, with Python or PHP or Java or C# or whatever, JavaScript, the way they do it is very, very consistent. They're much more alike than they are different. Nowadays, the differences are subtle in many respects. Stefan, thanks. Were you rejected at any job interviews? If so, how did you deal with it? I haven't worked for anybody since I was 18 or 19, and I was a bouncer in a nightclub. And I just quit because my business started going. I did go at one point when my first business, I was transitioning from my first business into my tech business. My first business had nothing to do with tech. And I was in a legal battle with the partners. And anyway, so an opening appeared at a very cool company, so I thought, in Montreal. A very cool company, world-renowned company at the time. Anyway, I won't get into it. So I went in. Some new people say you should go for an interview. They're looking for somebody with your skill set. I was like, it was a very well-paid job. So I said, maybe I could just do that, make some bucks while I'm figuring out what I'm going to do in my new business. And I went in there, and I just didn't like the bureaucracy. So I fired them before they had a chance to reject me. I rejected them. I think in the second or third department head I met, I just got up and I said, okay, I'm out of here. And they're like, where are you going? I said, I don't want to work here. And I was gone. So I rejected them. If you get rejected, big deal. Just say, why it didn't work out? And most of the time they'll tell you why. And then you learn from it and you move on to the next. There are plenty of jobs. Don't worry. Remember, the best fighters in the world, they throw, when they miss half of their punches, they're doing amazing. A 50% connect rate in a world-class fight is considered a total destruction of the opponent. In sales, you're lucky to close 5%. That means most of the time you're closing 1 out of 20. So who cares if they say, hey, it doesn't work out, just go on to the next and just ask them why. And most of the time they'll tell you, learn, and just continue. So don't take it personal. Don't take it personal. How did you start your web platform? You had worked also with other developers. Oh yeah, I had a small team with me. My first one, how did I start? My career, I assume you're talking about Studio Web. Yeah, Studio Web was not my first, so I've had developed platforms on a few times before, not many times, but a few times before. So I understood the process and very well. So I brought in a designer and a coder, and I brought in a junior, and we just sat down. And I said, okay, this is what we're going to do, and I architected it. and we just put it out very quick and dirty to see what would happen. Yeah, and it was based on something here, you know, but I had cash flow and I had money, so I just did it on a lark, as we say up here in Canada. Basically, I wanted to implement some ideas I had in my head. I didn't necessarily know there was a business model for it, which is not a good idea. The better idea is to find a problem that needs to be solved, then you develop something. For me, I was more of an intellectual curiosity, but in all honesty, I had an idea of what could be needed, and so it turned out pretty good. Yeah. I agree about Node.js, Node packages, a bit of a mess. That's it. Well, you know, it's a younger tech. PHP, it's very solid because it's been around for so long, but, you know, you don't have that. But nothing is perfect. You know, you're going to find something in Node that's superior to PHP, and then you go to PHP world, then you go to the opposite world, and you're going to find the opposite. You get the idea. All right. Hey, Stef, would you recommend someone to learn Lua for Nginx stuff? If there's a demand, that's kind of niche-y, but if you see there's a demand, then learn it. What about Deno to replace Node? I heard about that. I wouldn't. That's so new. I wouldn't jump on that unless somebody's willing to pay you to jump on it. What alternative technology can I use for animation instead of complicated CSS? For the web, I think WebGL, but you might want to look at that. JavaScript-based stuff. It's very niche. I haven't looked at that. In the old days, they used to do that in Flash, but that's you can't do that now. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? I don't know. What I'm talking to you guys right now, this is more or less a hobby thing for me. It's turned out as a sideline to be good for business, I suppose. I don't know. I enjoy what I do. I had retired for a while when I was quite young, and you get bored. So this whole idea of like retirement is kind of alien to me. I do my hobby now. There's some work and some days like, but this is more or less my hobby. So I don't know, I'll do some variation of this probably. Yeah, that's one advice I can give. Try to find something you like, so work is not work for you. Then then you're like, retirement is kind of this weird thing because you just enjoy what you do. What is your opinion on making OS Android with JS? OS Android, OS iOS, I'm supposed to say. You're thinking like using React Native or something. Yeah, I'm into cross-platform over native most of the time. Hello from Russia. You're doing pretty sweet content. I'm glad you like it. Thank you. Hello from Canada. My part of my family are from Kiev. Well, not quite Russia, but right on the border. What are technologies to use to be full stack developer in Python and JS? What frameworks and database systems, for example, are Django with Angular and MongoDB are good to use together? I don't know all the combinations out there. You would have to just see what the nerd zeitgeist tells you. I tend to suggest that you stick to, when it comes to stacks, the mainstream, because you don't want to find yourself in some sort of weird combination where if some problem occurs, you have no resources or far less resources to lean on to help you solve problems. So I would just poke around, see what it is, Is there any future in WebAssembly? I do not know. Just started a basic Python course. I wanted to develop poker training apps as well as health and fitness apps. Two domains I'm very familiar with. TWO. Anyway, what else should I be looking into? If you want these apps to run on phones, because I think these type of apps, a lot of people might be using their phones, so you might want to be looking at web technology to implement that rather than Python. Hey, Stef, do you think PHP is kind of underrated? Just asking. PHP is the pornography of the programmer's world. A lot of people use it, but a lot of people think that, anyway, you get the idea. What do you think of progress? I don't know what you mean. Progress is probably a technology I'm not familiar with. Why do people say Java and C# is hard? For me, they are way easier than JavaScript, which is hacky. Yeah, there's something to be said about that. That was one of my major debates in my mind when I was putting out the first set of curriculum for Studio Web. Curriculum was just a set of courses. I debated whether to do it with Java or JavaScript, to put Java or JavaScript, simply because, as you said, because JavaScript is weird, it's inconsistent in some things that it does, it can trip people up, whereas Java is extremely consistent and C# is extremely consistent. Although there's more concepts that you have to wrap your head around initially with Java and JavaScript. But yeah, you're right. JavaScript, because of its weirdness, it can be harder to learn. I decided to to put together a JavaScript course because I wanted to teach that front-end web stack. And anyway, I just teach people how to deal with those weird inconsistencies. It's more work for me as a course creator, that's for sure. But, for whatever reasons, I decided to go that route. But yeah, I know what you mean, man. Troy, creating an API with a front-end framework like React versus server-side rendering like PHP Laravel. That's interesting. Yeah, I would have to think about that and look into that to see what the pros and cons are in that regard. I assume, though, you're creating an API, even though you might expose it via front-end framework, you're still going to have some sort of data store, right? Some back-end component as well. That's interesting. Man, I never thought about it, but yeah, it's something to look into. I guess it depends on the specifics of the implementation. Hey, I am studying computer science and focusing on math, machine learning. I think it is really frustrating, and I am always stressed. How is it in job life? Is it the same, i.e. software engineer? The hardest time of being a software developer, engineer is when you're first starting out and learning, because it's all new. And you're literally restructuring the way your brain processes information and how it processes information. As you get into it, it becomes easier and easier and easier. That being said, software development is a process of continually solving problems. But once you get past the basics and you start building your first app and your second app and your third app, even simple ones, it becomes very satisfying because you're building something that actually works. So it does something. And for most of the population out there, it's voodoo. It's very strange and esoteric stuff. And that's why software developers make a lot of money. So general rule, if something is not popular or something is hard, there's good money. If something is very popular and easy, there's no money in it. So for example, a lot of people want to be actors. So they, to become an actor, you can just go and, you could argue, but it's hard. But you know what I mean? Everybody wants to be an actor. So so there's a lot of demand. So for every acting job, there's 10,000 wannabe actors. Whereas in software development, all the data shows that there's right now and for the foreseeable future, there's a lack of software developers for the jobs that are required out there. So anything hard or unpopular is worth money. Keep that in mind. Like plumbers. Plumbers, messy, hard job, but they make a lot of money. And they got to get a lot of training. That's why they make a lot of money, because it's messy and hard. Is it possible Rails could go obsolete in the next 10 years, or is it big enough to stay around? I would imagine it's going to stay around for the next 10 years. I think it's going to slowly slide into more and more niche status. I just don't see how it could regain momentum, but I could be wrong. But it will be around, but just less and less so. That's my guess. Like Cold Fusion, which is a technology that It didn't get quite as popular as Ruby on Rails, but it got fairly popular in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it slowly slid. It's still out there, but not nearly what it used to be. And it's been over 10 years, 15 years or longer. So I think you'll be okay. It's not my first choice, though. Can a procrastinator succeed in becoming a programmer? A procrastinator who procrastinates constantly will not succeed in anything except procrastinating. But a good thing about programming, you can work in spurts. You can be very productive, get a lot of stuff done, make money, and then take a week off and do it again, and take 2 weeks off and do it again. So if you're a procrastinator, freelancing and being a business owner is in your wheelhouse, because that you can set up a structure in your business, in your work life, so that you can start procrastinate when you need to procrastinate, and then work hard for a certain period of time, then go back to your procrastinations. Yeah, so that's it. That might be good, because you might be a good entrepreneur, because you're going to learn, you're going to be constantly looking for efficiencies. That being said, being an entrepreneur is a lot of work, a lot more work overall. But you know what? If you're doing what you like and how you want and when you want, even though you're doing more hours, it doesn't feel that way sometimes. All right. It's been 36 minutes. This is a short test. So if you like this live stream, you let me know. Give me a nice thumbs up. And that's about it. I'm glad the audio worked this time. I'm going to email the company that I'm using to do this live stream here. Let them know. All right. Thanks for joining, guys. And we'll talk soon.